Hey everybody, it is Mike Young, a digitalnomad.net. And guess what? I'm inside an airplane. And guess what? It is an Airbus A320. If you are a frequent flyer, you may know that that's what this is. And if you're not, you don't know that. And that's actually who I'm directing this video to. If you know about the Airbus A320, which isn't even mentioned in this airplane in this title, you know it's a fantastically engineered plane. And that's exactly what's wrong with the issue I'm going to describe today, which is about the Boeing 737 MAX, which is the exact opposite of that. I think I've made some content about this in the past, but this is so important. I was reminded on this trip that Denise and I, my beautiful wife, she booked the whole thing. It was an awesome experience, and I need to let you know this was a reminder to me that we didn't fly on any Boeing 737 Maxes, but guess what? When you book your plane tickets, I know everyone's booking for location, they're looking for the times, they're looking for the best price and all this other stuff, right? But this is also something you need to work into your little routine here. You need to look at the flights because they will tell you which type of airplane it's on. I'm not talking about all Boeing airplanes. I'm just talking about the 737 MAX. Just because it has a 7 in it doesn't mean that it's the same plane I'm talking about. 747 is different, 757 is different, 737 is different. It's 737 MAX. When you see that, I need you to scour the things. If you take trips, okay, like I said, I don't take all that many flights. But when I do, this is something that we have, Denise and I, on the to-do list. You check it out. They will tell you. Most airlines will tell you. And if they don't tell you, by all means, please contact them. This is a matter of potentially life and death for you. Now, I'm going to try to explain this in as simple layman terms as possible as to why you do not want to fly on a Boeing 737 MAX. All right. Now, let's go back to talk about some general things. Airplanes are kind of like ground transportation, like your car or your truck or your SUV. They're all different. Each model's designed differently, and some have better fuel economy and some have worse, right? Now, you can imagine if you're in the airline business, you're going to want to be able to use as little fuel as possible. Now, you as a passenger, you don't care. You just want the lowest price possible, right? And you want to be safe, of course. So that's I think you assume that it's safety. You assume that all airplanes are Mike. All airplanes are kind of about the same. I don't even know why you're telling me this. Well, they all have to meet certain standards. You're right, from the FAA and other regulatory bodies, but this thing that I'm about to talk to you today is not covered under a standard. There's been a big blow up about it over the past few years. There's been documentaries done about this kind of thing, and I'm going to shorten it down to just like the cliff notes, okay, of this thing. Well, the bottom line is the 737 by Boeing, just the 737, is the designation of a certain type of a narrow body chassis for like a smaller commercial airplane. Not like propeller plane small, just smaller than the biggest. Like the bigger ones are 747, 757. Okay. So you kind of get the idea. You're talking about a smaller airplane. Now, what happened over the years is that a lot of times these chassis, like a 737 is a chassis. It's kind of like a certain model car. Every once in a while, they'll try to keep the main chassis, but they'll redesign lots of parts. Or sometimes they'll go through a complete new generation of vehicle where they'll get an entirely new chassis. That happens from time to time. Actually, that's happening on, let's say, Toyota Tacoma pickup. I've got one. They've been using that same chassis for a long time, but now they're moving to a different chassis. Actually, that's a shared platform that is capable of putting on hybrid powertrains and things like that. Because up till now, the Toyota Tacoma, if you've ever owned one or known about the model, they don't have hybrid powertrains, so they have to go through a whole chassis thing. It's expensive. They've never really gone through this chassis change in, I don't know, 20 years probably since they developed the first original Toyota Tacoma 20 years ago or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong on the decisions in the comments. But that you get the idea. You know what I'm trying to explain to you. So 737 chassis has been around for a long time. Now, what's changed during that time is powertrains, kind of like I'm talking to you about. So it's kind of like, well, Toyota Tacoma says, I want to put a new, more efficient powertrain in there. Can I just shove that hybrid powertrain into the existing Toyota Tacoma chassis? Well, no, probably not. And that's why Toyota realized this, and they developed an entirely new chassis that's capable of incorporating the hybrid powertrain. Okay. Now, what about on an airplane? Okay, Mike, what's this got to do with airplanes? Well, same thing happens over airplanes. The jet engines, these giant spinner things on the wings, if you're for low tech explanation, that power the plane. they change over time. Now, what's changed with jet engines is that in order to get a more efficient jet engine, it's actually a larger unit now. Okay. And actually, this is kind of sort of what happened with hybrid powertrains too, because if you used to own a smaller four-cylinder Japanese car, you know that they were very small, they're very light, they got great fuel economy. Then they started growing in size. They still had the small light engines with great fuel economy. They kept growing in size, and then what happened was they developed the hybrid technology, which actually adds an electric motor and battery pack to the engine. So you actually got two ways of propulsion. It's a lot heavier, it's a lot more, and then you need to develop basically a new chassis to deal with that. This is actually a really good parallel. I'm just realizing this now as I'm recording this. That's exactly what happened with the 737 chassis by Boeing. They realized that in order to get a more fuel efficient aircraft, which is what the customers, the airlines, were demanding, because the airlines don't want to spend any more money on fuel than they have to, right? Okay, because they want to make as much money as possible. Well, they also don't want to spend any more money on the plane than they have to. So Boeing did the numbers. They're like, okay, got all the bean counters in a room, and like, how are we going to put these new larger engines that are more fuel efficient, and they're significantly larger. If you look at older 737s versus the 737 Max, Max is kind of like the maximum fuel efficiency engine, which is also maximum size. It seems counterintuitive. Like I said, with a hybrid powertrain, you're actually adding more weight, more complexity, larger mass, larger taking up size. And you're getting better fuel economy actually in the process. It seems counterintuitive, but that's what happens. Same thing happened with jet engines. They're not hybrids, they're running off of jet fuel, but you get the idea. Now, in a car, okay, and I'm a car guy. I've been car guy forever. I know I could talk to you guys for hours. Let me know your car questions in the comments if this relates to airplanes. That'll be kind of cool to have a discussion. But with cars, oh, I lost my train of thought. Okay. Let me think what I was thinking with this. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here's another analogy to help you understand. This is for lay people, not just laymen, lay people. Okay. So one of the concepts with automobiles, because they're ground transportation, is the concept of balance. And actually, I also run a nonprofit, and we talk about balance and things too. It's a whole life thing. But unless you're in an aggressive maneuver, or some people call it the moose test, where all of a sudden the moose jumps out in front of you, you got to swerve the wheel, you don't really understand the concept or recognize the need for the concept of balance and weight distribution until that happens. Because you know what? If you're driving a front wheel drive car and you all of a sudden got to jerk the car out of the way because there's a moose that suddenly appeared in front of you, you're going to feel all the weight of the car shift. And in a front wheel drive car, all that weight's in the front. So there's no weight in the back. So that makes some pretty funky emergency maneuvering handling challenges if you're not familiar with that. And most people are not. And then they usually wreck the car in those situations. A lot of times it's just because you don't have a skilled driver and you have a car that has very poor balance. Now that also became an issue with hybrids, but it's kind of weird because most of the hybrids started out as front wheel drive. Then they end up sticking this battery pack in the back side of it, even though they added an electric motor. So it actually made it more of a 50-50 front to rear weight balance, which is ideal. It's what you want. Now, if you move fast forward to electric cars and you have a well-designed electric car like a Tesla, you realize that the whole area between all four tires is all battery packed down low center of gravity combined with 50-50 weight balance. So when you take that emergency handling thing, you can do it with confidence. It's unbelievable. If you've not driven a Tesla, that's all you have to do is just drive when you're like, I don't even know what is the deal with this car, but it's so much better than whatever I've had. That's the concept of balance. Okay. The other thing is low center of gravity, because if you're high center of gravity, meaning a traditional ICE, internal combustion engine SUV, a lot of times when you make that sudden maneuver, not only is the car out of balance, but the center of gravity is high and you will roll that thing over. Okay. Now, on an electric car, in addition to 50-50 balance, if it's designed well, like a Tesla, all Teslas are like this. The weight balance is, the center of gravity is way low. So even if you make that jerking maneuver to avoid the moose in the road, you're not going to roll over, believe it or not. If you don't understand cars, you may not understand what I'm saying, but you get the idea that balance is incredibly important, even with land vehicles. All right, so what's this have to do with airplanes, Mike? Why are you telling me this? Well, if you take an older chassis, a 737, and you take off on, I think there's like one on each side, one on each wing, left and right edge. You take them off and you install some much bigger, much heavier engines, what do you think is going to happen? Well, it's going to change the weight balance. It's going to change front to rear, maybe not side to side, but front to rear. Yes, it's going to change front to rear because that old chassis was never originally designed to handle those big, bulkier, and heavier things. Now, why would Boeing stick with an older chassis, a 737 chassis, and put these MAX engines on it? To save money, because not the airlines want to spend less money on fuel, so they want the new fuel efficient engines, and Boeing wants to have a model that has these new fuel efficient engines on a smaller, a narrow body aircraft like a 737, and they want to be able to sell it for as little money as possible to the airlines so that they'll buy more and more and more of them, right? The airlines can buy a cheap plane that's more fuel efficient. They're going to do it, right? Yes. Okay. Yes. This is kind of what brought hybrids to the market too. You could do it for low cost, and you can run the numbers, and you can save fuel. Yeah, it's going to cost you a little more to buy, but then quickly you will see fuel savings. But the bottom end to the consumer, the bottom line to the consumer, which is the airline companies, is that these planes still need to be affordable as possible. We're in a competitive market. Like Airbus is a big competitor, and that's why I got the A320 behind me. You know why? Because A320 is a clean sheet of paper design. It was designed from the ground up as a new chassis to hang these giant fuel efficient engines from and have near perfect balance all around. Back to Boeing, back to 737 MAX. So you run into a problem with balance. Now, what does that mean? Okay, Mike, so the plane isn't perfect. That's why we get the pilots, right? Yes, but the problem is that this plane, I'm just telling you, in lay people's terms, is so out of balance that Boeing had to engineer in a separate specific system, which, by the way, they originally didn't even tell the pilots about. Eventually, they fessed up to it, that has a certain stick, like a stick sensor up near the front cockpit windows. And when it senses a certain out of balance situation, it actually forces a lot of things to happen automatically by computer, like with the flaps and the engines, to force the plane back into balance. Because Boeing realized that this plane with these massive fuel efficient engines is going to be severely out of balance and could potentially cause the plane to go down. That's how bad it is. When it goes out of balance, it goes down. Okay, it's not like a vehicle on the land, right, where you can stop or you can roll or whatever, or when the plane gets out of balance and you cannot control it anymore because it's out of balance, as I described in the moose test, you lose control, you go down. Okay, that's the problem. And literally, there have been plane crashes, if you look them up on Boeing 737 MAX, where entire planes have disappeared. And initially they said, we don't understand what happened. And that's because Boeing didn't even tell these pilots about the special system with the sensor up front that was overriding whatever they were trying to do when they realized that the plane was out of control. So it's just a big clusterfuck, basically, okay? Now, do you understand where I am? Say yes in the comments. Say I'm never flying Boeing 737 MAX, MAX. Make sure that MAX is on there. That's the one I'm talking about. That's the old chassis with the new engines. Not compatible. And you say, Mike, well, can't they just do something to make it compatible? No, they already did. They already put this special safety system in there to where the computers take over when the plane eventually gets out of control. A lot of times this happened on takeoff too. There's certain situations when it's flying in the airspace where it just can't handle it because of the balance. It just gets so out of control that the computers and even Boeing realizes have to take over. To me, this is a defective design. There's no way around it. I will not fly on a plane like that. Why choose to fly on a plane that requires a computer forced rebalancing system, which, by the way, may not even work? It's there because it has to happen or the plane goes down, but it still may not work. The plane still may go down. And there have been reports of this too. Just do all your searching on the internet. You'll see what I'm talking about. So hopefully I've explained in lay people's, non-engineers terms, why you never want to fly on a 737 MAX by Boeing. Remember, 737 MAX, 737 MAX, Boeing 737 MAX. That's the one. Stay away from it. Airbus, this is their A320. This is the plane to fly if you want to fly on a balanced aircraft. That's how I'll describe it. Someone questions you, why don't you want to fly on the Boeing 737 MAX? Because that aircraft is chronically out of balance and the design is defective. That's what you tell them. That plane, that bird will fly, but it's chronically out of balance and defective. It's just not worth it. Okay. It's like, remember the old GM trucks with the saddlebag tanks where they put the frame rails in further and hung the gas tanks on the outside? Whenever someone crashes from the side, it blows up the fuel tank. That's a defective design. There's no way around that. How about the old Ford Pinto with they mounted the fuel tank in the back, right in front of the rear bumper? Between the rear wheel and the rear bumper was a fuel tank. So if someone smashed into the back, it might blow the car up. That's a defective design too. You get what I'm talking about? This is why I'm making this video. I feel like any traveler needs to know about this. All travelers need to know about this. All travelers who get on aircraft need to know about this. And of course, it could affect you on the ground too, because these planes may come down anywhere. All right. And it's because of this defective design. Now, Boeing, I sure hope they're re-engineering the 737 platform. I don't even know. But as we do know, it's an incredibly costly endeavor to re-engineer an entire platform. And that's why they didn't do it. If you want to know, why didn't they do that? That's why. It's all about the money. It's all about making as much money as possible. So I would say vote with your dollar. Even if you don't think the plane's going down, which, by the way, it is only a matter of time to hear about the next 737 MAX that mysteriously dropped out of the air. Okay. Vote with your dollar and fly Airbus A320. That's what you want to do. I have no other reason to fly an A320. I don't know much about them other than they're balanced. That's all I need to know, right? That's all I need to know. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to reading your comments. Please share this video with anyone that flies, anyone that buys plane tickets. Stay away from the Boeing 737 MAX. Stay away from the Boeing 737 MAX. Read your flight listings. Check out the aircraft that's on your flight. Stay away and do not get inside of a Boeing 737 MAX. Don't do it. Just say no to the 737 MAX. Thanks for watching. Bye.